What's up YouTube? Today we are looking at the new Kilohearts snap-in called nonlinear filter. So the idea behind it is it's kind of the arch nemesis of their traditional filter, which was designed to be very clean and clinical. This one is the opposite. It's designed to be unruly and pretty distorted at times. And for sound design, this is great because it unlocks all sorts of weird characteristics. And I want to show you a couple of cool things that you can create with this filter. Let's dive in and have a look. So first and foremost, I want to show you, one of my favorite things to do with Kilohearts Snap Heap is to create these kind of like transition filter effects groups that I put onto my kind of like, say for example, kick and bass group or percussions group, and I can kind of use it to filter sounds in and out and transition from like one section in a track to another section in a track. So I used to use like a combination of filters, distortions, bit crushing, and all sorts of things to get like different stuff for these tracks. One of the cool things about the new nonlinear filter got all these different kind of characteristics in the different filter styles. So let's have a look here. It by default starts off with saturated. You do have varying different styles which we're going to get into. For those who know, Phase Plant and Snap Heap and Multipass, they all have these kind of like snap-in plugins that you can load in, and it always had the ladder filter, which was a kind of like distorted-y kind of, it was a filter with character. The downside about this is it didn't have high pass, didn't have band pass, and didn't have notch. This is the greatest thing about the nonlinear filter, is the fact that it's not just low pass filter, but also that you've got all these other different modes to choose from. Just for this example, this is on the kick and bass group, and I want to create this kind of like a filter transition thing over here. So let's try out this digital mode here, and we can give it some high pass. So this tends to sound a little bit like it's got a bit crush on it as well. So how this works is the drive is kind of like the amount of mode or character that's being applied to the sound. As you see, okay, well this one, when it's all the way down, there's still a little bit of kind of like digital character coming through. But with a lot of the other ones, it's pretty clean with the drive down. Then as you turn the drive and the Q up, you can kind of see that character really start to kind of like be imprinted onto that sound. Let's slap digital on here, and we can put some Q up here, and let's just play around with this. So usually what I do is I will assign a macro to the cutoff of the filter. Let's just turn it down a bit so we've got a bit more range here. And let's just call this filter. And then I'll apply another macro to the mix of that lane. So this allows us to mix in and out the effect that's happening on the sound. So we can, for example, mix it in, transition it, and then mix it out for the clean bass sound again. Okay, so obviously this mode is a little bit unruly. Let's try out some of these other ones. So the bonus of having this mix is you can hear like when the filter sweeps back down to 0, it does still alter the sound a bit, and that's a bit of a no-no. We don't want our kick and bass to be altered throughout the entirety of our track. So another thing I like to use here for these types of things is a bit of harsh, and because we're mixing it in and out, you'll hear that it kind of like doesn't affect the dry kick and bass, and only when we start the transition do you hear that kind of like stereo sound. But often that adds quite a bit of gain, so let's just put on percentage, 80%, let's see how this goes. Cool, that sounds nice. Okay, let's look at some synth examples. So, like with all the other snap-in plugins, you can load nonlinear filter inside FazePlant, and so we're going to look at creating some, some sound design type of stuff using the characteristics of these filters. So let's just start with a kind of basic analog saw wave, and let's slap this nonlinear filter over here. Let's put a random, sync this to 1/16, and then we can set this to the cutoff of the filter. Let's just listen to what we got here so far. Okay, pretty basic sound for now. What we can do though is we can start pumping this Q in this drive to kind of like incorporate some of the characteristics of that filter. So here what we can do is, one of the cool things is you can actually just hover over each of these and it temporarily changes it to that. So you can kind of like audition what it sounds like before actually changing it to that, if that makes sense. The digital is really nice. It kind of creates almost like a FM kind of tone out of just a regular saw wave. So here what I want to do is let's put in a filter over here, and we can use this to remove a little bit of the low frequency that's coming through before the effects and stuff. What we can do is something I've noticed about the random in FazePlant is sometimes it's out of time when you use it alongside some of the snap-ins like the transgate and stuff. So what we can do is we can kind of set this into a note on random. So I believe we set all of those down to 0, and then let's just put in like a gate pattern here. And then if we set this lane to poly, then it allows the modulation from this note on random to come through to that. I'm going to use a clean filter after this to again remove some of the lows that are coming through, and then we can apply some effects here. So nowadays I like to apply my stuff like my delays and my reverbs and that kind of thing within a snap heap like stack within FazePlant, because that allows me to get kind of tricky with the routing and do kind of like parallel things, and kind of opens up a lot more capabilities. And just straight off the bat, like if you start off with like delays and stuff, you can't drag one in here, so it's a little bit harder to kind of set up once you've done that. So just by rule of thumb, I kind of just like put a snap heap in there before I start messing around with delays and stuff, because like I said, I can create these kind of like filter. I've gotten into kind of like why I do this on the tails, but in previous videos. But yeah, anyway. And then it's just a matter of like the amount of mix of how much of that sound effect we want to add to the sound. Okay, let's look at another example. I want to create like a kind of formanty type of thing using nonlinear filters. So let's just go new. Let's put in an analog. I actually want to put in a melody here. I think, okay, I've got a simple melody here. You guys can copy that if you want. And we're going to make a formant type of lead here. So I've got a very simple basic saw wave. This one is one polyphony and glide. So it's a monophonic lead with some glide in it. So here, let's put in a snap heap and let's open this guy up. So here, what we want to do is we want to set all of these to parallel. So we've got 4 lanes of parallel audio coming through this effect. Here, let's put in a nonlinear filter. Let's set this to band pass. So then here, what we can do is let's just apply this to all of these. And then let's set a macro to modulate each of the filters. They don't have to be exactly the same. You kind of get these nice characteristics when they're not the same. You can actually modulate some of them forward, some of them backwards, and all sorts of stuff. And then we want to offset all of these ever so slightly. Let's call this filter. Let's set a macro for all of the Q controls. Let's call this Q. And then let's set another macro for all of the drive controls. So here, I guess the unique thing about what we're doing now is we want to use each of these, we want to try out each of these different modes for different voices in this formant patch. So essentially, we want maybe one of them to be saturated, one of them to be a different one, but we're going to play around with them, play around with some of these settings and see what we can come up with. We actually might want to set this guy over here, this random, to modulate the filter amount that we created. Cool. So let's play let's play around with some of these different modes here, and this resonance and drive as well here. Ooh, that sounds great, eh? Awesome, that's about it for today, guys. Hope you guys enjoyed that. Let me know what you think in the comments. As always, I'm going to be posting these presets to my Patreon for all my $5 supporters. So if you want to know what that's all about, check out the link in the description. If you haven't yet, hit that subscribe button and that like button as well. See you guys next time. Cheers.